My name's Tomm Duff. I'm the legal counsel for Polly Carver-Kimm. I'm going to make a couple of brief remarks about the filings that have been made in this case, which, by the way, are available at my website, www.tdufflaw.com. And then Polly will make a brief statement, and then we'll open the matter up for questions. You can use the Q&A function to send questions, and then we'll read them out loud, and either Polly or I will respond to them. We are recording the press conference to the cloud, and after we're done, we'll send out an email so that you can get the link and download the recording if that's what you desire to do. So let me just make a couple of remarks about the legal claims that were made in this matter. There are three separate filings, and it's a little confusing, but they all arise out of the same set of facts. And if you read the facts section, they're essentially the same in all three filings. There was a filing that we made yesterday afternoon in the Polk County District Court. It alleges a violation of the state whistleblower law and alleges that the stripping or removing of Polly's duties and the stifling of information by the Reynolds administration amounts to mismanagement, abuse of authority, and in the midst of an ongoing state pandemic, a danger to public health and safety. There were also two filings made in the State Appeal Board. One is against two individuals, Governor Reynolds and Pat Garrett, and the second is against the state of Iowa. Again, these are essentially, they're identical filings. The two claims that are made in the State Appeal Board are that Polly's discharge was in violation of public policy, specifically her conduct or act of compiling and producing records pursuant to the state FOIA, Freedom of Information Act law, furthers a clear public policy of the state of Iowa of open examination of public records, and that was thwarted by the defendants in this case. The other claim is that the termination violates her free speech rights under the Iowa Constitution. So those two claims just procedurally have to be filed with the State Appeal Board. They will sit there for 6 months, and then in 6 months we'll remove them from the State Appeal Board and join them with the lawsuit that's pending in Polk County. So that's just sort of a procedural background on what the lawsuits are about. So I'll let Polly take it from here.
Thanks, Tom. I just have a couple of remarks before we take your questions. During my nearly 13 years at the Iowa Department of Public Health, I never had a negative job review, and I was never removed from a project. That all changed just days after the governor's office became involved. From that point on, I was systematically cut out of the COVID-19 response, beginning with being removed from responding to media requests. In the weeks following, I was cut off from my work with local public health agencies, schools, long-term care facilities, and counties. I was removed from posting social media messages about COVID-19 for the public. And finally, I was removed from coordinating open records requests. The only explanation I ever received was that I was not a team player and that I was causing friction with the governor's staff. And at the time of my termination, I was told the department was restructuring. At the time of my firing, there were 5 people doing the job I used to do by myself. That's not restructuring. That's a systematic and deliberate effort to thwart open communication. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll open it up for questions now. Here's a question from Tommy Clark. Polly, can you comment at all on what was happening during this timeline starting in March? In other words, did you say anything to your leadership about these concerns?
Well, you know, the IDPH response to COVID-19 actually began in December when the department started preparing for the virus, and I was heavily involved in that. We were doing lots of work with counties and schools and long-term care facilities, and I was heavily involved in that. I would say that everything was going along that way until the first case occurred. And at that time, then we were told that all of our messaging needed to come from the governor's office, that we were collaborating on that messaging, but that the governor's office would be handling it. And then days after that, I was taken off of media messaging, or, you know, speaking with the media and helping coordinate interviews. At the time that occurred, I did ask, why is this happening? You know, why am I not doing media inquiries? And I was told that another staff member was out at SEOC, at the State Emergency Operations Command Center, as you know, and that would make it easier to coordinate responses. But a few days after that, I was sent out to SEOC as well, but I still didn't take over those media questions. I was kept off that permanently. So yes, I did ask why that was happening, and I did complain to several people that I felt like our messaging was being hijacked. And so yes, I did complain.
There's another question from Amy Peterson. What was a major message in the COVID-19 pandemic early on that you were prevented from sharing?
Well, Amy, I would like to be able to give you an answer about a specific message that I couldn't share, but I was totally cut off from communication to know what kind of messages we should be sharing or we were not sharing. I was told in March not to contact Doctors Padati or Garvey, that I shouldn't email them or call them or text them because they were too busy. So I had very little information except what I was receiving from the governor's office and from the other people in our department who were handling messaging.
There's a question from Nick Coltrane at the Des Moines Register. Can you elaborate on how Planned Parenthood was the final straw, so to speak, given the other issues related to the COVID-19 response?
Well, I believe it was the final straw, as you say, because I mean, I was walking on eggshells pretty much from March until my termination, because I knew something weird was going on and I didn't understand why they were doing this to me. I know it seemed like there was always an action taken and then a reaction to the action I had taken. The Planned Parenthood story was just a request for pregnancy termination data for 2019, pretty standard request. I did not go through the governor's office for approval to release it because it's something that IDPH routinely does. You know, data is apolitical, it's just numbers, and other people interpret what those numbers mean. So I didn't hesitate to gather the information. We'd done it before, presented it to the Register. And then it came out with a story that was, the Register released a story that was, could be perceived as unflattering to the Reynolds administration. After that came out in the paper, I was part of an email conversation that asked how the Register got that information and that I should have contacted the governor's office before releasing it. They were clearly unhappy. And so shortly after that then is when I was terminated. So, I mean, you can put those together whether they're related or not, but they seem to be to me.
Question from Brett Funk at KTIV News 4. Did they give any explanation to how they were restructuring? Was your position eliminated?
Brett, no. I was given absolutely no information about what the restructuring was, why they were restructuring, if someone else was going to fill my position. or if they were eliminating that position. And the answer is no. I was given absolutely no explanation.
And to further respond to that question, that as far as we know, there was no other positions were restructured at the time of Polly's termination, which I think is also suspicious. There's a question from Michaela Ram. In the lawsuit, it states that you have not seen the governor's office involved in the open records request process during your tenure. What was the explanation you received for their involvement?
Yeah, that's true. Open records are something that are, it's a legal right and they're handled daily. I mean, the department receives open records requests all the time, not just during COVID-19. And so, yes, I never involved anyone but our staff, and the OCIO is the state agency that would compile the emails because they have access to all the emails. So yeah, the governor's office was never involved. Their involvement during this event, I was never given any explanation for that. I was only told via email at one point that the emails and documents that had already been approved by our Assistant Attorney General, by the Deputy Director, by all the people that were involved, they'd already redacted and reviewed them, then had to go through another review by the governor's staff before they would be released. And in at least one case involving me directly, all of that had occurred, pretty simple document, and I was told, hold, to not release it. And to this day, I don't know whether it's been released or not.
A question from Caroline Cummings. I'm curious about these ECC emails that are mentioned in the petition. These emergency email addresses are news to many of us reporters who have been filing records requests. We didn't know they existed. It appears the AG's office said they are, that they fall under open records laws. Did the state ever tell you explicitly they didn't apply? And if so, what were the reasons?
Caroline, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because this is one of the main reasons that I worked with Tomm to file a lawsuit. Is I feel very deeply that the media was not treated fairly in this regard. When there is an emergency response at the department, we enact our emergency protocols, which include creating the incident management system. And that's where somebody who in regular life is a secretary, let's say, but during the emergency response, they become in charge of, let's say, logistics. And so then they have a new email address in addition to their regular address that is like ecclogistics@idph.iowa.gov. And everybody involved in the emergency response has those emails, including myself. And so when we received a request early on, an open records request early on, I clearly saw that the information the reporter was looking for would not be in that person's personal emails, because it was part of the emergency response. And so I asked our Assistant Attorney General, shouldn't we include the ECC emails? And at that time I was told yes, because of the way the request was formulated, I guess, that they would be included. And we did, in fact, provide those emails. I think. I know they were gathered. I'm not sure if they were redacted, and I'm not sure if they were ever released, or if there was some kind of exorbitant cost attributed to that is still being fought out somewhere else. But many open records requests came in after that clearly, I don't know what information would have been contained in those email addresses, but I do know they exist, and I do know they were used in this response. And I repeatedly asked, should we ask for those emails to be searched? And I was just ignored. I never received an answer why we should not, never received any kind of response. I was just ignored. I would send an email and it just would not be responded to.
There's another question from Nick Coltrane at the Register. Give the benefit to the governor's office. Do you see any plausibility that the governor's office centralized communications to prevent mixed messaging regarding a pandemic that was unknown to many people.
Absolutely. And this has been done all over the country. And I don't have any concerns. In fact, one of the tenets of crisis communications is that we all work together and you are all one voice. And so, no, I don't think that that was wrong, that the governor's office wanted to centralize communications. The problem that I saw for the media and for the public is that, in my experience, the information that was provided was chosen carefully and had to be vetted several times by the governor's office, even though it appeared to be simple data that we would normally provide. But yes, I understand your point, and I do think that it is important for the governor's office to lead an effort. I just think that in some areas there was overreach.
Another question from Caroline Cummings. Can you recall any other time that when the governor's office was this involved in the department's business? And I assume she means the Department of Health.
Mm-hmm. No, not like this. In my experience, okay, I was the communications director, and I never felt that level of involvement. There were many times when we partnered with the governor's office on various initiatives, like when the anti-vaping campaign, there was great cooperation there. And there have been other instances like that where we worked together, and I think successfully. But I don't recall a time, and I was the communications director during H1N1, another virus that was unknown and there was great public concern about. And it was nothing like this regarding the governor's office being involved. They were aware, and we issued daily situation reports to the governor's office. They knew what was going on. They were involved in that way, but not involved to the extent as this pandemic.
A question from Michaela Ram. Polly, can you elaborate on your thoughts on the impression of this administration's handling of information sharing? Do you feel the public does not have all the information it needs regarding the COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a very good question. I think that I do believe very strongly in the Iowa Department of Public Health, and that it has the public's best interests. We have wonderful epidemiologists at work every day. I feel that the governor's office chose to use the information that it was presented from the department in the way that would best serve the governor's agenda and needs. I don't want to say that the public's health is in danger because of this. I just feel that there was a more open flow of information that could have benefited the public in their decision-making about how they wanted to handle the pandemic, and that would come through providing information to the media.
There's another question from Nick Coltrane at the Des Moines Register. Did the governor's office ever give any reason for the hold on COVID-19 FOIA requests?
No, and I would push, I am something of a bulldog for public access to open records and in a timely and low cost manner. And so I would, shoot an email, about once a week. Can we release this now? Can we release this now? And I was not responded to. The only email I ever received was one word, and it was hold.
So a question from Caroline Cummings. Some local public officials have expressed frustration with getting information from IDPH when they have previously felt the partnership between IDPH and their local offices was strong. Did you see this happening?
Yes, and I just briefly want to say that the local public health agencies, the county health agencies are doing amazing work. And I felt privileged to work closely with them during during the beginning of this pandemic until I was taken off that work. I worked closely with them. We call each other. They're doing a fantastic job with limited staff. Okay, I just have to put in a plug for them. I felt our partnership was very strong when I was assigned to helping them, because we had somebody who felt strongly that they needed to receive as much information as they can. I felt that after I was taken off those duties, that they weren't receiving as much information as they were previously, because the information they received, again, needed to be vetted before they got it. And I do feel that in some ways they've been left out. I know I received many phone calls about, why is the governor announcing that our county has a case when we don't even know it yet? Or why is in this case being announced? Part of that is just the logistics of how the system works with entering data. But other situations arose that they just felt like they didn't have the information they needed to respond to specific situations.
Okay. Question from Nick Coltrane at the Register. Could you elaborate on how you were seeking to present information in a way that would best serve the governor's agenda?
What I mean by that is that, like I said earlier, that data is data, okay? It's numbers. And you can spin them any way you want. So you can look at a rising number of COVID cases, let's say, and say, well, that's because we're having more testing, and that's a good thing. Or you can look at those rising numbers and say, wow, there appears to be a lot more virus activity in the state, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I suppose the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But I feel that we would present data to the governor's office, and then they would use it to present maybe an optimistic picture of the pandemic, which isn't necessarily bad. I'm just saying that's how they chose to use it.
I think that's, there's some other questions pending, but I think they've been answered already. Unless anybody has anything new, I think that concludes the press conference. Again, the filings are available on my website, www.tdufflaw.com, and as soon as it gets uploaded, we will send an email to everyone with the link so that you can obtain the recording of the press conference. So I appreciate everyone for coming, and thank you.
Thank you.